My name's Claire Barton. I'm a mezzo-soprano. I'm 30 years old and I come from New Zealand. Ideally, I like to start with learning the notes and the rhythms. If I can do that for a while and even think about the words, then that's a good thing. I like to learn the words separately. I like to make sure I've got the pronunciation of languages as correct as it possibly can be before I put it onto the music. And then once I've done that, the pronunciation is sort of another step, because I always translate all of my songs. But I think it's really important to take a dictionary and actually work out what you think it means. Then I would look at what the opera's about. Looking at the way in which that aria fits into the drama of the whole opera. No, that doesn't necessarily mean I go and watch the entire opera. Usually it would mean that I listen to it though. I think it's really important to have a listen. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of YouTube and a lot of purchasing on iTunes as well. Dalila is played in so many different ways. She's a little bit like Carmen in a lot of ways, you know. You can play her as an intrepid freedom fighter if you want. As I've gotten older, really the first thing that I do is think about how I want to do it. I look at other people. I look at the way they inflect certain words, or listen really to the way they inflect certain words. I listen to what they do with their voices, because a lot of the drama is actually in the voice, and you can do a lot just with this. I look at the way it's been staged and I question why it's been staged the way it has. And I decide whether or not it's something that I particularly like, because the beauty of performing it outside of an opera is that the singer actually gets to choose. You become your own director in a way. So it's your chance to kind of put your stamp on it in a way that you don't get in an opera. You've got to make a mark of your own. With a whole role, you get the opportunity to develop the character over a really long period of time. You know, the usual opera is 2-3 hours. You basically have to make your statements straight away with an aria that's taken out of an opera. It's their band doing it. It's popular. It means people might not necessarily understand the context of the opera, or really even understand what the song is actually about. So I really choose, depending on how I feel, to go one of two ways: whether to really tell the story, or whether to, with Mon Cœur sur Reservoir in particular, it's a really famous aria, and it's beautiful. There's no getting away from it. But actually, she's been really, really disingenuous and actually quite horrendous. And she's not singing just for Sanson. She's also singing for an audience of people ready to come in and take him away, you know, once she's managed to persuade him to cut his hair off. I take those things into account, but oftentimes when I'm doing a performance out of context, I think about how I'd like to see it performed if it was just by itself, and how I think the audience might like to see that. And sometimes I play it genuine, as if there's complete honesty in what she's saying. I think you've got to bear in mind the audience you're performing to, and that is not to say I do not believe in dumbing down for an audience, because I don't think an audience is never stupid. So firstly, that don't dumb it down, don't make it nothing, don't just sing it as a pretty little song that you know. Treat it like a lead, I think, very much so. Treat it as if it's not part of a whole story, but if it's just that one little story. And I think that really helps. And my third tip would be really I would just be spontaneous. I would react to to the audience, to how the audience reacts to me. Most audiences will have something in front of them explaining the situation even if they don't know the opera. So that contextualises it for them. I really think that in the end you have to make a decision about how you're going to do a piece and how you're going to perform a piece. And you know, sometimes it can really work just taking it straight out of its context and the way you would do it in the opera. And I think people love opera because it's beautiful music, but it's also drama. It's also really visceral. And just like in an actual opera, even in an opera aria, I would never be afraid. And this is a quote from the famous Italian singer, to never be afraid to make an ugly sound if it's ugly for a purpose. Sometimes what makes Dahlia so wonderful is that her imperfection comes out a little bit in the voice. You know, that you can get that sort of edge to her, that kind of viciousness. And I you know, as long as you're not damaging yourself, I think that's a perfectly reasonable and valid thing to do. And quite exciting sometimes too.